Hey guys, it's Olivie Blake, and this is me not writing. Okay, so this is going to be breakfast with Olivie because I have a lot of things to do this morning. I was just doing a recording of Captain McIver's Ship of Souls. It's a long story, so it's going to take me a while. I think after like an hour and 20 minutes of recording, I am only about halfway through, so yeah. And I'm going to have to work out at some point today, you know, endorphins, etc., etc. I've put on the clothes hoping that that will be like enough to get me going, but it's not. We'll see. Well, you can only see this, but it's from Girlfriend Collective. It is all recycled materials, and I bought this on Earth Day. The only things I wear now are basically workout clothes or like leggings and sweatpants, so yeah. Anyway, this is what we're having for breakfast. I'm having a weird light situation, so I might regret this later, but it is what it is. So you guys may know, if you follow me on Instagram, that I have recently started making scones. Mr. Blake and I, well, okay, so before all this quarantine stuff happened, I used to meet him for a coffee after school on Fridays. We don't do that anymore because we live in the same house, and the only place I could possibly meet him is literally right here. But yeah, so I started making my own clotted cream. So fancy. I will admit to you right now that I know that people have feelings about whether you should put the cream or the jam first on a scone. And I don't necessarily understand what those feelings are because I am, as you probably have noticed, American. I have no loyalty to how you're supposed to put clotted cream on a scone. So my instinct is to go cream first and then jam. But if I am wrong, it wouldn't be the first thing that America has done wrong. It's from Trader Joe's. Anyway, let's see, what can I tell you? I am watching the show Normal People on Hulu. I read the book. I liked the book. I really did not like Sally Rooney's other book, Conversations with Friends. I was not a fan of that. It's just a preference thing, just the main character, I just wasn't a huge fan. Although I think I have learned about Sally Rooney that like her particular type of dysfunction that she writes about is not the same kind of dysfunction that I write about. And it's kind of nice to see that like the way that she writes women, it's good to see that represented. At the same time, I'm not like, these aren't people I would want to be friends with, which is not necessarily a quality for what a character should be like. It's just, that's why I don't like Conversations with Friends, because I don't like the main character of that book. I just think she's meh. But anyway, good book, really horny show, which I'm obviously saying as a compliment. But yeah, definitely. Either watch it alone or watch it, you know, with a significant other in a, yeah, you get it. I see why I usually drink rather than eat while I do this. Chewing is very difficult to do. Anyway, I'm enjoying Normal People. Even though, I mean, the whole point of the book is that these two people are not normal, and rooting for them is like sort of a conflicting thing to do, because at various times they are more unreasonable than others, but definitely enjoying it. I'm also watching this season of My Brilliant Friend. If you don't know that I love the Neapolitan novels, if you have not read the Neapolitan novels already, I honestly don't know what you're doing with your life. The show is really good. It's in the like Neapolitan dialect and sometimes in Italian, not that I can tell the difference when it's happening, but yeah. Subtitles. But it's really good. It's perfect. It's exactly like what I would imagine, would expect. It's great. I'm gonna have to finish the rest of this scone later. It takes way too long to chew. Oh, and also the spell read has just been posted. It's AMERICANAH. And to be honest, I really need to look up how to pronounce the author's name because I don't want to do it incorrectly. So I'm gonna put it here. And then next time I'm going to say it correctly. But yeah, it's a really good book. I actually just finished it like a week ago. I went through just like a sprint. I finished like probably 4 or 5 books last week, and they were all really, really good. So we're gonna see a lot of them coming up in S.P.E.L.L. I think the next 3 months are pretty much planned out. The books are kind of leading into one another, and I'm really excited about those discussions. So if you're needing something to do with your time, I encourage you to pick up one of those books. Join the discussion if you've already read it, because I will admit that I am definitely late to the party on this one. I had been told many times that it was a good book. I'm like, you know, I know that, but there's so many books to read. But really good. If you're like me and know people have said to read it and you haven't read it yet, now's your chance. Okay, wow, let's get into it. Okay, so do you think baby fever is a real thing? My husband's twin brother and wife are expecting for the first time, and I'm so excited for them and also jealous. I feel like I've always been made to be a mother, but my husband wants to wait until our loans are paid off, which is at least 3 years. It's hard to imagine waiting that long while watching them go through all this excitement. So yeah, okay, there's a few things here. First of all, I like to call the thing that your husband is doing provider syndrome. Mr. Blake has the same thing where he I think, you know, women have this sort of biological awakening. When I initially answered this ask, I said that I had read an article about how it's not actually some sort of hormonal or chemical thing. It's just sociological programming. And I'm really not sure I buy into that because you say that you have always felt like you would want to be a mother. I have never felt that way. When Mr. Blake and I were getting serious, I told him that I did not ever have plans to be a mother and that I said, if you marry me, you are taking on the possibility that I won't have children. And he was like, I think you might change your mind, but also it wouldn't be the end of the world. And I was like, yeah, I'm not saying I wouldn't change my mind either. I just want you to know going in that this is not something I ever expect to do. So for me to kind of awaken to the idea of being a mother did feel like baby fever. It did feel like a fever, like an illness that came over me. And it did feel like it was a full body, biological thing. So even though scientists are telling me that it's not a real thing, I find that I don't know that I can agree with that because I feel like I do. I have always had an understanding of who I am. I think I've always had some questions about what kind of mother I would be. And I kind of really opened to the idea, and I've written about this a little bit in the Princess's Guide, that I really only became open to the idea when it occurred to me that you're not just the mother of a baby. Because having an infant still doesn't appeal to me. That's not really what I'm into. Babies, I'm not very soft on babies usually. What I do love are toddlers. I really love kids who are beginning to ask questions about the world around them and who are beginning to, see things in a new light and kind of understand how they fit into the world. I've always gotten along very well with kids who are at that kind of sometimes troubling age, like 12, where they're kind of just coming into themselves and kind of just, they have a personality by then, but they don't really have an understanding of how their personality fits with other people. I used to teach vacation Bible school, and I was usually given the 5th graders because I found that I really enjoy talking to kids at that age where they think they're too old for childish things, but they're still too young to be, adults or even teenagers. It's just such a vulnerable age, and I just feel very nurturing, I guess is the word. Or I have felt recently like there is a part of me that wants to nurture something. Of all the kinds of love, the tender love, my partner gets some of that. But then also part of me wants something to love in that way. And obviously I think we're women, babies come to mind. But that being said, I never really felt open to the idea of being a mother until I realized I would have to be the mother of a teenager at some point. I'd have to be the mother of a 5th grader. I'd have to be a mother of an adult. And for some reason, those things were much more appealing to me. I think the idea of getting to be with someone for their whole life is more enticing to me than just the baby fever part. Which is why to me it doesn't feel like sociological programming. Yes, I understand that many people my age are having babies, and so of course it might trigger something for me where it's I want to have one. But I feel like my personal awakening to the idea of being a mother has been much more cerebral. Also kind of a biological yearning. It's just I know that I possess this kind of love, and I want to give it in some way. Personally, I am very open to the idea of adopting, or I would still very much like to be a foster parent at some point, which brings us back to Mr. Blake's provider syndrome, where I'm not sure every day that I want to have a baby. I'm sure like a good majority of the time, maybe like 60% of the time, I'm like, yeah, this is something that I want and I would like it now. And then the rest of the time I'm like, do I really want my life to change? I don't know. So I've been kind of, it's kind of the same thing where I know, Mr. Blake and I both know that we're not financially where we would want to be in order to have a baby. But I am getting older. We all are. And this is the thing, you know, that I think with women, there's this mystique of like, I think that almost every woman I know has at least some small amount of fear about their fertility. I don't know if I would call it fear or just anxiety, but, you know, I think we always kind of have to wonder, like, this is something that we have to put off until the right time. But then you put it off, and then you wonder, like, am I losing my chance? And I think that might be, that's definitely where I am. Waiting 3 years feels like a long time in woman time. 3 years can take you from peak, you know, your peak childbearing years into the miscarriage likely years. And so I think for us, that weighs heavier on us than the men in our lives can necessarily understand. It's something that Mr. Blake and I had to talk about a lot, because I was like, yeah, there are times when I'm not sure I want to do this, but I also know that the longer I wait, the less physically able I will be to do this. And I think for them, they really think of it as, okay, let's get everything in order, and then we'll just do it. But as women, we are privy to this female community that understands that miscarriages are a thing that do happen, that infertility is actually quite common, or fertility difficulties are quite common. And this, for whatever reason, either we don't share with men or they are not necessarily hearing these stories as often as we are. So our feelings about our own fertility, like all of this is wrapped up in our fertility as part of who we are, whether we choose to engage it or not. So yeah, I totally get why. I understand why Mr. Blake or your husband want to be financially capable. Of course, of course. I was raised by a single mother for the majority of my childhood. And I remember how difficult it was when she had to say no to me because she couldn't afford things, you know, and I grew up in like a 1-bedroom apartment. And I understand why that's not ideal. But at the same time, I do remember that I don't feel like I was lacking things. You know, I was lucky enough to not be materially in need. Of course, there are some expenses you can't get around if you and your partner are both working. If you're trying to pay off loans, daycare is very expensive. There are a lot of things to consider. And in that sense, your partner is correct to wait. But at the same time, he probably isn't thinking about it the same way you are, which is, how much longer do I have? Our fertility is like a ticking clock, which can be really stressful and really anxiety-inducing. And I know for me, I am very secretly afraid that I can't get pregnant when I want to. And I have an IUD, which means that I'm at a point where my ideal situation would be accidentally getting pregnant, because I've been married for a long time. Like, I would be okay. I'd work with it. It'd be fine. But that's not possible for me because I have a 10-year IUD in. And that means that if I want to get pregnant, I have to purposely take it out. And purposely making the decision to have a baby is like extremely stressful. And I've not made that decision yet, and it weighs on me all the time. My cousin actually is having a baby, and she's younger than me, and she has been married for less time than me. And it was a thing where, I mean, I wouldn't have said, even a couple of years ago, I wouldn't have said this was something I wanted. This has been a very recent, very slow burn of like, this might be something that I want. And I don't really want to talk about it because I have a tendency to be really hard on myself, and I don't want to talk about it's going to, I sense that I'm going to feel like I'm failing, and I worry about that. And so when she announced that she was pregnant, I definitely had a very visceral reaction. I think maybe you are also having, of just envy, of just jealousy. I wish that it were happening to me. Like at the same time that I'm not sure if this is what I want or if I'm ready for it, I still wish it were happening to me. I don't know how to explain that. And I think, you know, the reason that you have come to me about it is because there really is no explaining that. That's just kind of this weird tension that we find ourselves in at this age. And I truly cannot tell you how much I did not see this coming at all. I used to have to like medicate to be around children. They could be really overwhelming. Sometimes being around my in-laws with a lot of small kids running around in a very different environment than the kind I was raised in. It was like I would have to like take a Xanax to just like chill out because you just like so much going on. So really, I mean, I don't even think my in-laws think I'm capable of being a mother because that was the kind of that's how they were basically introduced to me, as being overwhelmed by so many children. And truthfully, I'm not really in a hurry because I know I only want one. I don't want like a whole brood of children. But that being said, I do definitely sometimes, I look at my husband and I just think, my God, I just love you so much that I want to make you a smaller version of you. I want to do it in my body. I want to take my body and all your body and squish them together inside of me and give life to that, to you and me combined. And this is why I say that I feel it feels so biological to me. It does not feel sociological at all. It feels animalistic, like this animal desire to reproduce. It feels crazy and not at all part of social programming, which is why, yeah, you know, it's nice to know that this is happening to other people, but it's just so, it's like this weird, almost out of body experience that I just didn't see coming at all. And you know, I want to show the world to someone. I want someone who's going to look at the world in new eyes. I feel like part of my problem with just everything is it's so hard to find something to look forward to. It just seems like the world is so broken in so many ways. And part of me just knows that I've like reached this point. There's just so much cynicism. It's part of our generation. Those of us who are millennials are just, you know, we've seen the whole economy fail multiple times. We've seen the job market not be open to us. We are not going to be able to afford homes the way our parents were and their parents were. We're not going to get the things that previous generations got. And it can be really easy to feel like, why are we even here? And so the idea of having something innocent to remind me almost the beauty of things, the mysteries of the world, the fascinating, all the places there are to see and the new things there are to experience and the art and culture and just, yeah. I think part of what is appealing about motherhood to me is the idea that the beauty will come back to me when I'm seeing it through someone else's eyes. So yeah, so I don't know that you were necessarily asking a specific question. I mean, I guess if you were looking for validity about your feelings, they're valid. They're absolutely valid. And I agree with you, and I'm kind of lost in the same way that maybe you are. And I think that it might require sitting down with your partner and actually figuring out, like, 3 years might be too long, because the process of trying to have a baby could be a while. And the baby also takes a while to grow. I think in Mr. Blake's mind, he sometimes thinks that, like, oh yeah, once he decides we're ready, then all of a sudden the baby will just pop into the world, and that's not really how it works. And of course now it's hard to even think about this because who knows how long this quarantine thing is going to go on. I feel like it's obviously irresponsible to be pregnant right now and to have to to get pregnant on purpose right now would be putting a lot of like healthcare professionals in danger. I feel like it's just the moral ambiguity of this time. Is it even morally responsible to bring a baby into this world knowing that it looks like this? I mean, this is all stuff that I have my characters going through in The Princess's Guide, and it's something I'm going through as well. So I know I've talked for a long time already, but just wanted you to know that you're not alone. I think a lot of women are going through this. I also know that there are a lot of women who are not. There's a lot of women who just, this isn't happening for them, and that's totally fine, and I get it, and I kind of wish it weren't happening to me. I kind of wish that I were still in the place I was before, where I was like, no, this is just never going to be my thing. It's definitely, motherhood is a big question mark for me. So if it is for you as well, I think that's okay. But I think being open about it with your partner is important. I was initially a little bit afraid that he would think that I was making demands, you know, that I was like one of those women who was like, give me a baby or else. Because I know women like that who are just like, I don't even care how my marriage is going, I want a baby. But I think I think our relationship is good. I think my marriage is truthfully the best thing I've ever done. There were so many chances for me to end up with someone who was not nearly as good as the man I married. And there were lots of chances for me to make huge, terrible, life-altering mistakes. And I didn't, for whatever reason. I picked someone who makes me happy, and it comes easily. And for my marriage to be so good makes me feel like I want to bring a baby into that, because I could give someone such an amazing childhood, which is crazy. But you think it's a small thing until you realize giving a kid a mother who cares, a father who absolutely cares, who's also an excellent teacher and has, you know, so much to offer, and to have parents who love each other. To want to give that to someone is kind of like it's a big deal. It's great to have that. And so I think I'm just trying to feel lucky about that without feeling like time is slipping away, which is a challenge. Hi, Olivie. I hope you and Mr. Blake are doing well in this uncertain time. Thank you. Sort of. We're doing sort of well. I've always had a problem with maintaining friendships once proximity is lost. Even my best friend will only get a text once every few days if there isn't an ongoing discussion. You say even, but like I am much less in contact with my friends than this. I must be older than you. Because I definitely think that like as you get older, you get further away from your high school friends, your college friends, the amount that you communicate with each other is definitely less than even every few days. Once I'm with a friend physically, we can talk for hours. However, this doesn't happen as often due to work. Any tips on being a more present and consistent friend? I mean, I think the truth of it is that you're probably, and it's not just you, everybody is mostly around the people that they're physically around. This is why, you know, workplace friendships are so important. And it's not necessarily you not being present if you're not, I mean, I'm assuming you're responding to text messages. And I think if your concern is that you're not the one initiating them, this is kind of just something that happens as you get older. I'm definitely not, I mean, everything you're saying to me seems normal. That might just be me. I think that Kimura said a great thing a couple of weeks ago about the best way to be a present and caring friend is to literally just care about the other person's interest and what they're doing. And I really do think that it is impossible to keep tabs on a lot of people. I think you really mostly keep tabs on people who are physically in your life most of the time. And I think that also that's true for others. I've quoted the Schitt's Creek thing before where Alexis says, people aren't thinking about you the way that you're thinking about you. It's definitely the case. Like, yeah, just because you're not being all that present, to be honest, they're probably not wondering about you that much either. I mean, hopefully they're wondering about you some, and then you are having a back and forth when that opportunity arises. But in terms of advice, I mean, it just seems like you might just be in a weird, you know, a transition phase. And also, given the way the world is, I can't give you that much advice now, because being present now, I don't even know what that looks like. You know, Skype or FaceTime whenever you can. I guess I would say it's not out of the ordinary for your focus to be on your own life and what's physically occupying your life and your time. What's right in front of you, just like anything, what's right in front of you is what has the majority of your attention. In terms of being more present, yeah, I don't know. You got to care what's going on with your friends and what they need. And that's really dependent on your friends. My best friend and I, we don't talk that often. It's kind of the same thing where, you know, he'll call me and then we'll talk for like 2 hours. And that'll happen every month or so. I think we used to see each other once a month because we live, he lives in San Diego and I live in LA. So it's doable, but it's kind of far. We just kind of trade off. I have a friend who lives in the Bay Area who I see a couple times a year, but we like take a trip together once a year. And that's like our big thing. We get like a week's worth of bonding and then like, you know, just chat occasionally after that. I think there's nothing wrong with a friendship where you're not consistently physically in each other's presence. But yeah, I mean, I don't have any advice, I think, because I'm a little unclear about what you want, I guess. You know, being physically with people versus technologically in their lives just really depends a lot on the context of your life. I mean, I would like to think that you're making choices based on what you care about. So being a present friend means caring about them and what's going on with them and what they're up to. And if you don't, I've been kind of sitting on this ask because I just don't really know what to do with it. I mean, to tell you the truth, I just don't. I just think it's so common. But like, yeah, but I think that's the mark of a good friendship is that you don't need to be in contact all the time. And when you do see each other, it's like, okay, this is great. And we just fell right back into it and we don't have to go through all the small talk and we know each other well. And if it's a matter of them wanting you in their lives more, you have to figure out something that works for you. I have a friend who never answers her text messages, ever. This was, when we were in college, we lived in the same like little dorm suite. And even then she didn't answer her text messages. When we lived on the same campus in practically the same room, it was hard to find her unless I physically tracked her down. So now that she lives across the country, it's kind of a challenge. We actually spoke for the first time in I think 4 years. And what was very interesting about it was that we did not talk at all about what we were doing, like physically what was going on in our lives. We just talked about like books we had just read, and we talked for about 2 hours about like, she's doing a dissertation on the podcast as like sort of an evolution of the novel. I think her kind of area of study is the novel Dead. And so we talked about this for like 2 hours and then, yeah, and just talked about books. And that's what our friendship is based on, is that we just have a super like, you know, intellectual friendship. And I was craving that sort of conversation and she was there and it was it's something that was great and we enjoyed it. And there's no, I don't think that either of us is less of a friend just because that's what we want from each other. And that's what we get. That's what we expect. That's what we get. It's exactly the friendship that we said yes to. And just because it is a little bit low commitment doesn't make it less. So it might just be a period of adjustment. But caring about the people in your lives and acting accordingly is like really the only advice I could give you, especially with things as they are. Because I think also, I mean, just on a logistical sense, if you could establish something that happens regularly, it's the same advice I give for working out. That's just like, if you go to a class and you just know you have to go to that class, then it's fine and it's not a big deal and it doesn't take a lot of energy to arrange these things. So if you arrange a weekly or monthly or whatever check-in or something longer, like if you do go to brunch together or whatever, I think that routine is actually a great thing. I mean, just in general, routine is like the baseline treatment for mood disorders. So anytime you have a routine, you want to make things easier, that's the way to do it, is just to make it something you don't really have to think about and just something that you do. But I think that thinking about it is like the important part of a friendship. Someone occurring to you and being in your thoughts. My best friend, I texted him last night 823, which is thinking of you, which is something we've said to each other since high school. Just texted him 823 and he texted it back to me, and that was it. But that is our way of being present for each other. So yeah, I know that's really not helpful. I know it's not helpful, but being a good friend as an adult is really hard. I think as another example, I was having a hard time keeping in touch with a friend who moved away. A lot of my friends have moved away is also another thing. And so we started writing letters to each other. You know, I would devote like a couple of hours just to her to write these like very long letters. And then getting one from her was always great. So I think it's just, yeah, it's just a meaningful friendship is between the two of you, and figuring out what means something to you. That's not something that I could just tell you. But I think caring, that's really it. If you care, you'll figure out a way. You mentioned the Commoner's Guide and how it's, you know, the thing about the Commoner's Guide is that these people all live close to each other. So seeing each other all the time is just something, this is what I'm talking about, is people just constantly being on your radar. They're literally constantly with each other. So that's what, I mean, they can't even see one of the other without bumping into another one. So like part of why that might feel unrealistic to you is because that their jobs actually do interconnect like that. I think honestly the reality of friendships in adulthood is that they don't take the same shape as your teenage friends or your early 20s friends when you don't all live physically in the same place. And so how you evolve with your friendship, that's what makes the friendship. That was probably not helpful, but I don't know. I gotta eat my breakfast. I gotta walk the dog. I gotta go for a run. And hopefully this week, Captain McIver's Ship of Souls will post in the Olivie Blake is Not Writing podcast audio stories situations. I'm also writing the Princess's Guide this week. It might be late though. I don't know. It's been really hard to focus, but I'm going to do my best. Okay. Anyway, this has been me, Olivie Blake, not writing, and I'll see you next week.